GR number 108-280-83, November 16, 1995. Romeo Season, Nilo Pacandar, Noel Tan, Joel Tan, Richard De Los Santos, and Joselito Tomayo, petitioners. People of the Philippines and Court of Appeals, respondents. The case before us occurred at a time of great political polarization in the aftermath of the 1986 EDSA revolution. This was a time when the newly installed government of President Corazon C. Aquino was being openly challenged in rallies, demonstrations, and other public fora by Marcos loyalists, supporters of deposed President Ferdinand E. Marcos. Tension and animosity between the two groups sometimes broke into violence. On July 27, 1986, it resulted in the murder of Stephen Salcedo, a known chorista. Version of prosecution. The prosecution established that on July 27, 1986, a rally was scheduled to be held at the Luneta by Marcos loyalists. Earlier, they applied for a permit to hold the rally, but their application was denied by the authorities. Despite this setback, 3,000 of them gathered at the Rizal Monument of Luneta at 2:30 in the afternoon of the scheduled date, led by Oliver Lozano and Benjamin Niega, both members of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. The loyalists started an impromptu singing contest, recited prayers, and delivered speeches in between Colonel Edgar Dulat Torres, then Deputy Superintendent of the Western Police District, arrived and asked the leaders for their permit. No permit could be produced. Colonel Dulat Torres thereupon gave them 10 minutes to disperse. The loyalist leader asked for 30 minutes, but this was refused. Attorney Lozano turned towards his group and said, "Gulpin niyo ang lahat ng mga Cory infiltrators." Attorney Niega added, "Sige, sige, gulpihin niyo." The police then pushed the crowd and used tear gas and truncheons to disperse them. The loyalists scampered away, but some of them fought back and threw stones at the police. Eventually, the crowd fled towards Maria Orosa Street and the situation later stabilized. At about 4 p.m., a small group of loyalists converged at the China Garden, phase 3 of the Luneta. There, there they saw Annie Ferrer, a popular movie starlet and supporters of President Marcos, jogging around the fountain. They approached her and informed her of their dispersal, and Annie Ferrer angrily ordered them, "Gulpin ninyo ang mga Cory hecklers." Then she continued jogging around the fountain chanting, Marcos pa rin, pabalikin si Marcos, bugbugin ang mga nakadilaw." The loyalist replied, "Bugbugin." A few minutes later, Annie Ferrer was arrested by the police. Somebody then shouted, "Kailangan kumante tayo ngayon." A commotion ensued and Renato Banculo, a cigarette vendor, saw the loyalists attacking persons in the yellow. the color of Correista. Renato took off his yellow shirt. He then saw a man wearing a yellow t-shirt being chased by a group of persons shouting, "Iyan, habulin iyan. Cory yan." The man in a yellow t-shirt was Celdo, and his pursuers appeared to be Marcos loyalists. They catch Salcedo and boxed and kicked and mauled him. Salcedo tried to extricate himself from the group, but they again pounced on him and pummeled him with fist blows and kicks, hitting him on various parts of his body. Banculo saw Renulfo Sumilang, an electrician at the Luneta, rushed to Salcedo's aid. Sumilang tried to pacify the Molders so he could extricate Salcedo from them. But the Molders pursued Salcedo unrelentingly, boxing him with stones in their fist. Somebody gave Sumilang a loyalist tag, which Sumilang shown to Salcedo's attackers. They backed up for a while, and Sumilang was able to tow Salcedo away from them. But accused Raul Biliosos emerged from behind Sumilang as another man boxed Salcedo on the head. Accused Richard de los Santos also boxed Salcedo twice on the head and kicked him even as he was already fallen. Salcedo tried to stand, but accused Joel Tan boxed him on the left side of his head and ear. Accused Nilo Pacadar punched Salcedo on his nape, shouting, "Iyan, Cory yan, patayin." Sumilang tried to pacify Pacadar, but the latter lunged at the victim again. Accused Joselito Tamayo boxed Salcedo on the left jaw and kicked him as he once more fell. Banculo saw accused Romeo Season trip Salcedo and kicking him on the head. And when he tried to stand, Season repeatedly boxed him. Sumilong saw accused Jerry Neri approach the victim but did not notice what he did. Salcedo somehow managed to get away from his attackers and wipe off the blood from his face. He sat on some cement steps and then tried to flee towards Rojas Boulevard to the sanctuary of the Rizal Monument, but accused Joel Tan and Nilo Pacadar pursued him, mauling Sumilang in the process. Salcedo pleaded from his life, exclaiming, "Bawa na kayo sa akin, tulungan niyo ako." He cried, "Police, police, wala bang police?" The mauling resumed at the Rizal Monument and continued along Rojas Boulevard until Salcedo collapsed and lost consciousness. Sumilang flagged down a van and with the help of traffic officer, brought Salcedo to the Medical Center Manila, but he was refused admission. So they took him to the Philippine General Hospital where he died upon arrival. While in version of defense, as you can see here in version of defense, here are the alibis of the accused where they denied that they have nothing to do with the death of Stephen Salcedo. The principal accused denied their participants in the mauling of the victim and offered their respective alibis. Accused Joselito Tamayo testified that he was not in any of the photographs presented by the prosecution because on July 27, 1986, he was in the house in Quezon City. Next, Jerry Neri claimed that he was at the Luneta Theater at the time of the incident, while Romeo Season, a commercial photographer, was allegedly at his office near the Luneta waiting for some pictures to be developed at the time. He claimed to be afflicted with hernia impairing his mobility. He cannot run normally nor do things forcefully. Richard de la Santos admit he was at the Luneta at the time of the mauling but denies hitting Salcedo. He said that he merely watched the mauling, which explains why his face appeared some of the photographs. Unlike the other accused, Nilo Pacadar admits that he is in Marcos loyalist and a member of the Ako'y Pilipino movement, and that he attended the rally on the fateful day. According to him, he saw Salcedo being mauled and, like Richard de los Santos, merely viewed the incident. His face was in the pictures because he shouted to the maulers to stop hitting Salcedo, while Joel Tan also testified that he tried to pacify pacify the maulers because he fitted Salcedo. The maulers, however, ignored him. The other accused, especially Attorney Lozano and Niega and Ani Ferrer, opted not to testify in their defense. Next.
Ruling of Regional Trial Court. On December 16, 1988, the trial court ordered a decision finding Romeo Sison, Nilo Pacadar, Joel Tan, Richard De Los Santos, and Joselito Tamayo guilty as principal in the crime of murder qualified by treachery and sentenced them to 14 years, 10 months, and 20 days of reclusion temporal. As, min- as minimum to 20 years of reclusion temporal as maximum. Annie Ferrer was likewise convicted as an accomplice. The court, however, found that the prosecution failed to prove the guilt of other accused and thus acquitted Raul Villosas, Jerry Neri, Rolando Fernandez, Oliver Lozano, and Benjamin Nuega. The dispositive portion of the decision reads as follows. Naglabas ang Regional Trial Court ng ang kaso agad sila na may kaso sila Romeo Sison, Nilo Pacadar, Joel Tan, Richard De Los Santos at Joselito Tamayo bilang pasimuno sa krimen sa pagpatay. At si Ani Ferrer ay nakasuhan bilang kasabwat, pero gayunpaman sila Raul Villosos, Jerry Neri, Rolando Fernandez, Oliver Lozano at Benjamin Nuega ay pinawalang sala. Wherefore, judgment is hereby rendered in the aforementioned cases as follows. Yung mga dahilan kung bakit may kaso at napawalang kaso yung iba. Number 1, in People versus Raul Villosos and Jerry Neri, criminal case number 86 47322, the court finds that the prosecution failed to prove the guilt of the two accused beyond reasonable doubt for the crime charge and hereby acquits them same charge. Napagdesisyon na ng korte ang pagkawalang sala nila Raul Villosos at Jerry Neri dahil hindi napatunayan ang kanilang pagkakasala. In People versus Romeo Sison, criminal case number 8647617, the court finds the accused Romeo Sison, Nilo Pacadar, and Joel Tan guilty beyond reasonable doubt as principals for the crime of murder defined in Article 248 of the Revised Penal Code. And there being no other mitigating or aggravating circumstances, hereby imposes on each of them an intermediate penalty of from 14 years, 10 months, and 20 days of reclusion temporal as minimum to 20 days of reclusion temporal as minimum to 20 years of reclusion temporal as maximum. Ang dalawa, si Remy Sison, Nilo Pacadar, at Joel Tan ay napag-alaman nagkasala ng beyond reasonable doubt bilang pasimuno sa krimen na ito. 3. In People versus Richard De Los Santos, criminal case number 8647790, the court finds the accused Richard De Los Santos guilty beyond reasonable doubt as principal for the crime of murder, defining Article 248 of the Revised Penal Code. And there being no other extenuating circumstances, The court hereby imposes on him an intermediate penalty of from 14 years, 10 months, and 20 days of reclusion temporal, as minimum to 20 years of reclusion temporal as maximum. Nap- Napatunayan sa korte na nasasakdal na si Richard De Los Santos ay nagkasala beyond reasonable doubt at wala pang pagbabago sa pagpapalit sa pangyayari, ay nabigyan na siya ng parusa ng reclusion temporal. 4. In People versus Joselito Tamayo, criminal case number 8648538, the court finds the accused guilty beyond reasonable doubt as principal for the crime of murder, defined in Article 248 of Revised Penal Code, and hereby imposes on him terminate penalty of 14 years, 10 months, and 20 days of reclusion temporal as minimum to 20 years of reclusion temporal. Napatunayan din ng nasasakdal na si Joselito Tamayo ay nagkasala beyond reasonable doubt bilang isa sa mga pasimuno sa krimen. In People versus Rolando Fernandez, criminal case number 8648931, the court finds that the prosecution failed to prove the guilt of the accused for the crime charged beyond reasonable doubt and hereby acquits him of said charge. Si Rolando Fernandez ay hindi napatunayan ang pagkakasala na inaakusa sa kanya. Sa pamamagitan nito ay pinawalang sala agad siya. In People versus Annie Ferrer, criminal case number 8649008, the court finds the said accused guilty beyond reasonable doubt as accomplice to the crime of murder under Article 18 in relation to Article 248 of the Revised Penal Code, and hereby imposes on her an intermediate penalty of 9 years and 4 months of prison mayor as minimum to 12 years, 5 months and 11 days of reclusion temporal as maximum. Napag-alaman ng korte ang nasabing akusado na si Annie Ferrer ay nagkakasala beyond reasonable doubt bilang kasabwat sa krimen. The accused Romeo Sison, Nilo Pacadar, Richard De Los Santos, Joel Tan, Joselito Tamayo, and Annie Ferrer are hereby ordered to pay jointly and severally to the heirs of Stephen Salcedo the total amount 74,000 actually damages at the amount of 30 pesos moral and secondary damage. Ang mga nakasuhan dito ay sina Romeo Sison, Nilo Pacadar, Richard De Los Santos, Joel Tan, Joselito Tamayo, Annie Ferrer. At binibigyan sila at pinahihintulutan sila upang magbayad ng 74,000 for damage to family of Stephen Salcedo and as moral and exemplary damages. The period during which the accused Nilo Pacadar, Romeo Sison, Joel Tan, Richard De Los Santos, and Joselito Tamayo had been under detention during the pendency of these cases shall be credited to them provided that they agreed in writing to abide by and under detention during pendency of these cases shall be credited to them provided that they agreed in writing to abide by and comply strictly with the rules and regulation of the city jail. Ang mga akusado na ayun, sila Nilo Pacadar, Romeo Sison ay binigay sa pangangalaga ng city jail. The warden of the City Jail of Manila is hereby ordered to release the accused Jerry Neri, Raul Villosos, and Rolando Fernandez from the City Jail unless they are being detained for another cause or charge. Ang warden ng City Jail ng Maynila ay inutos na palain agad sila Jerry Neri, Raul Villosos at Rolando Fernandez bilang sa wala silang sala mula sa City Jail, maliban na lang kung may iba pa silang krimen na nagawa o ibang kaso. The petition for bail of accused Rolando Fernandez has become moot and academic. The petition for bail of the accused Joel Tan, Romeo Sison, and Joselito Tamayo is denied for lack of merit. Ang pagpiyansa ng mga akusadong si Rolando Fernandez ay isang naging masusi o pinag-aaralan pa. At ang mga akusadong Joel Tan, Romeo Sison, at Joselito Tamayo ay tinanggihan dahil sa walang karapatan. The bail bonds posted by the accused Oliver Lozano at Benjamin Nuega are hereby cancelled. At yung dalawang akusado na si Oliver Lozano at Benjamin Nuega, kinansela o hindi pinayagan ang kanilang pagpiyansa. Error of the CA. Before this court, accused appellants assign the following errors. 1. The Honorable Court of Appeals gravely erred when it noted that the accused failed to cite anything on record to support their averment that there were no witnesses who have come forward to identify the persons responsible for the death of Stephen Salcedo. Nakita ng CA o Court of Appeals na merong malaki na grabing pagkakamali ang nagawa sa Regional Trial Court. Napansin ng Court of Appeals ay nabanggit na walang testigo o saksi para makilala ang mga taong may kinalaman sa kamatayan ni Stephen Salcedo. 2. The Honorable Court of Appeals gravely erred in giving credence to the unreliable, doubtful, suspicious, and inconclusive testimonies of prosecution witnesses sumilang. Ang RTC ay nagkamali na magbigay ng maling katotohanan, pagdududa, kahinahinala at walang katiyakang testimonya galing sa respondents na si Ranulfo Sumilang. The Honorable Court of Appeals likewise erred in finding the accused guilty when there was no evidence to prove that any of the accused carried a hard and blunt instrument. The admitted cause of hemorrhage resulting in the death of the deceased. Ang Regional Trial Court daw ay gustong nagkamali na akusahan ng guilty ang mga akusado kahit na walang sapat na ebidensya o hindi totoong sanhi ng pagkamatay ng biktima ay hemorrhage. 4. The Honorable Court of Appeals gravely erred in finding that there exists conspiracy among the principal accused. Ang Regional Trial Court daw ay nabigong hanapin o litisin ng maigi kung meron bang nangyayaring sabuatan mula sa pinuno ng naakusahan. 5. The Honorable Court of Appeals gravely erred in finding that the crime committed is murder and not death, homicide, because in a tumultuous affray. Ang Regional Trial Court daw ay nabigong hanapin ang totoo kung ano ba talaga ang nakumit, kung murder ba o hindi, o hinding sadyang pagpatay o homicide dahil sa magulong na ganap. Nabigong hanapin kung murder ba o hindi sadya dahil siguro sa nangyari nung araw na yon, kung bakit namatay yung biktima. In their additional brief, appellants contend at 1. The Honorable Court of Appeals gravely erred in reaching a conclusion of fact, utilizing speculations, surmises, and non-sequitur conclusions, and even the disputed decision of the trial court, to uphold the invalidity of the very same judgment, or contrary to the rules of evidence. Nakita rin, ito yung mga additional na nakita rin na nagkamali sundin ang mga konklusyon ng mga katotohanan sa paggamit ng mga haka-haka, hula, mga walang matuwid na detalye, at maging pinagtatalunan sa Regional Trial Court na pagtibay ng wasto sa pagpantay ng paghatol. Lahat ng nagawa ng Regional Trial Court ay salungat sa rules of evidence. To the Honorable Court of Appeals erred in admitting exhibits D, G, O, P, V, 2V40, W, 2W13, all of which were not properly identified. 3. The Honorable Court of Appeals gravely erred in concluding that conspiracy existed in the case at bar, disregarding altogether the settled jurisprudence on the matter. Nakita dito na parang hinayaan lang na tinapos ang kaso na baka may sabuatang nangyari na hindi napapansin. 4. The Honorable Court of Appeals gravely erred in ruling that the crime committed was murder, not death homicide in tumultuous affray, sidestepping in the process the factual grounds surrounding the incident. Ayun nga, nagpasya agad na ang crime na nakumit ay murder at hindi man lang naisip na baka ito ay hindi sadyang pagpatay o homicide lang dahil sa magulong pangyayaring nung mga araw na yun. At lumihis sa proseso na nababatay sa katotohanan batay sa totoong insidente. Appellants mainly claim that the Court of Appeals erred in sustaining the testimonies of the two in prosecution eyewitnesses, Ranulfo Sumilang and Renato Bangkulo, because they are unreliable, doubtful, and do not deserve any credence. According to them, the testimonies of these two witnesses are so suspect because they surfaced only after a reward was announced by General Lim. Renato Bangkulo even submitted 3 sworn statements to the police geared at providing a new or improved version of the incident. On the witness stand, he mistakenly identified the detention prisoner as another case of Christopher Rolando Fernandez. Ranulfo Sumilang was evasive and unresponsive, prompting the trial court to remand him several times. Ang mga appellants ay inaangkin ang kanilang pagkakamali dahil sa mga kanilang testimonya. Dalawang saksi na si Ranulfo Sumilang at Renato Bangkulo dahil hindi sila maaasahan o kaduda-duda at hindi karapat dapat panigan ang kanilang mga testimonya. Ayon sa CA, ang kanilang testimonya ay lumabas lamang o lumitaw nung matapos magbigay ng gantimpala si General Alfredo Lim. Parang nung nagbigay ng gantimpala si Lim ay bigla silang sumulpot o naglabas ng mga testimonya nila. Kaya ito yung pinagtataka ng Court of Appeals. Sa tinatayuan ng mga saksi, nagkamali siyang nakilala ang isang bilanggo na si Rolando Fernandez. Si Ranulfo Sumilang ay umiiwas at hindi tumutugon. Naguudyok sa huskado ang ilang beses sa hindi pag attend sa ng ilang beses sa RTC sa trial court. Decision.
Okay, decision. We find, however, the existence of conspiracy among appellants. At the time they were committing the crime, their actions implicitly show a unity of purpose among them, a concreted effort to bring about the death of Salcedo, where a conspiracy existed and is proved, a showing as to who among the conspirators inflicted the fatal wound is not required to sustain a conviction. Each of the conspirators is liable for all acts of the others regardless of the intent and character of their participations, because the act of one is the act of all. The trial court awarded the heirs of Salcedo 74,000 as actual damage, 30,000 as a moral and exemplary damage, and one half of the cost of the suit. At the time he died on July 27, 1986, Salcedo was 23 years old and was set to live on August 4, 1986. for employment in Saudi Arabia. The reckless disregard for such a young person's life and the anguish wrought on his widow, the three small children warrant an increase in moral damage from 30,000 to 100,000. The indemnity of 50,000 must also be awarded for the death of the victim. In view whereof the decision appealed from his hereby affirmed and modified as follows. Ito na yung pinaka ano po ng Regional Trial Court, yung mga pinaka nakasuhan ng 5. Sila accused, appellants Romeo Sison, Nilo Pacadar, Joel Tan, and Richard De Los Santos are found guilty beyond reasonable doubt of murder without any aggravating or mitigating circumstance and are each hereby sentenced to suffer the penalty of reclusion perpetua. The accused appellant Tamayo is found guilty beyond reasonable doubt of the crime of homicide with the generic aggravating circumstance of abuse of superior strength, and as a consequence, he is sentenced to an indeterminate penalty of 12 years of prison mayor as minimum to 20 years of reclusion temporal as maximum. 3. All accused appellants are hereby ordered to pay jointly and severally the heirs of Stephen Salcedo the following amounts: 74,000 as actual damage, 100,000 as moral damage, 50,000 indemnity for the death of the victim caused against accused appellants so ordered. ER number 178541, March 27, 2008. People of the Philippines, Plaintiff Appeal versus Angelo Zeta, accused appellant.
The version of prosecution. The prosecution presented as witness Alin Mercado, Dr. Maria Cristina Freire, Police Inspector Solomon Segundo, Rejude Nevera, Edwin Ronc, Francisco Garcia, SPO Juan Carlos Villarin, SPO Tuwaka Magandakal. Their testimonies taken together were the following. On October 28, 1995 at around 12 midnight, Edwin Ray and certain Melvin Castillo drinking spree outside the house of Ray located at number 30B Tasio Street, Taloma, Quezon City in the morning at the same day. A car stopped in the front of the tree. Appellant driving the car, Petronilla, was seated beside him. Petronilla opened the car window and asked Edwin if he know Ramon, and the latter addressed at number 25C General Tino Street, Laloma, Quezon City. Edwin replied that he did not know Ramon or his address. Therefore, appellant Petronilla left on the board the car and proceed to the General Tino Street, Laloma, Quezon City. At about 2:15 in the morning, the same date, the car boarded at Apelian Petronilo stopped in the front of the Ramon House, number 25C General Tino Street, Saloma, Quezon City. After parking nearby Apelat and Petronilla aligned from the car and proceed to the Ramon's house. Petronilla repeatedly called Ramon. Alain, niece of Cristina Mercado Ramon, common law wife, was awakened by the repeated calls and opened the door. Petronilla requested Alain to call Ramon. Alain told Petronilla that she would wake up Ramon, who was house, then sleeping with Christina, the second floor of the house. Alain invented a appellant the Petronilla inside the house, but the two relied that they would just wait for Ramon outside. Alain proceeded to the second floor of the house, knocked the door Ramon's room. Ramon's woke up. Subsequently, Alain went door upstairs and proceeded to the dining table. While Ramon was walking down the stairs, a appellant suddenly entered the house and shot Ramon several times. Different parts of body, caliber 45 Lama pistol upon seeing a appellant shooting Ramon Alin inside the restroom. When the gunshot seized, Alin went out of the restroom and saw Ramon's floor and blooded and ground floor on the ground floor.
Edwin, Ray, and Melvin were still drinking when they heard the gunshots. They rushed to the direction of Ramon's house. When they were nearing Ramon's house, Petronilla suddenly stepped out of the main door of Ramon's house, followed by Apelan. Melvin uttered, "Mamamatay tao." Petronilla merely looked at them and entered the car. Apelant also proceeded inside the car, and thereafter the car sped away. Subsequently, Aline went out of the house and called for help. Edwin, Ray, and Belvin approached her. They carried Ramon and placed him inside a vehicle owned by a neighbor. While they were on their way to the Chinese General Hospital, Ramon told Aline that the one who shot him was asawa ni Nelly na kapitbahay namin sa Las Piñas. Ramon died due to gunshot wounds while being operated on a Chinese General Hospital. Thereafter, the police arrived at the crime scene and recovered several empty bullets, shells, and slugs. At about 10:55 the following morning, SPO2 Magundacan received a report that a carnap vehicle was parked along Lacandula Street, Pituazon Boulevard, Quezon City. SPO2 Magundacan proceeded and saw appellant about to board a car armed with a gun visibly tucked in his waist. SPO2 Magundacan approached appellant and asked him for a license and or registration papers of the gun, but appellant did not show any. SPO2 Magundacan also inquired Petronilla, who was inside the car, also armed with a gun tucked in her waist, if she had a license, but Petronilla likewise failed to show any. Thus, XPO2 Magandakan brought appellant and Petronilla, upon the request of the La Loma police, were turned over to the police station for the investigation as regards the killing of Ramon. Appellant and Petronilla were thereafter charged with murder. Next. Version of the defense. The defense presented the testimonies of Appellant Petronilla and Annabel Vergara to refute the foregoing allegation. Their version of the incident as follows. On 27 October 1995 at about 10 o'clock in the evening, Appellant Petronilla and Annabel, housemaid of the couple, were in a couple's house at Cainta Rizal. Later, Appellant took Petronilla's caliber 38 pistol and went to his brother's Jose Zeta Jr. house in Marikina, arriving therein at 12 o'clock midnight. Jose was out of the house, so Appellant waited for him at about 2:30 in the morning of October 28, 1995. Jose arrived there after Appellant demanded from Jose the return of his three firearms, one of which is caliber .45 pistol. Two other firearms. Eric Jose drew a gun. Appellant also drew the caliber .45 and shot Jose for 4 times. Jose fell down on the ground. Afterwards, Appellant left the house, took Jose's car, which was parked near the house, and proceeded to Police Precinct 8 Project 4, Quezon City, where he waited for a certain Tony Tolentino, whom he claims to be a policeman assigned Southern Police District. At about 9 o'clock in the morning, the policeman on duty precinct informed Appellant that the latter's car, including the caliber, was carnap vehicle. The policeman searched the car and found several guns, including the caliber .45 and the caliber .38. Appellant was thereupon detained and charged with illegal possession of firearms and carnapping. At about 10 o'clock in the morning of 28 October 1995, Petrina received a telephone call informing her that Appellant was Police Precinct 8 Project 4, Quezon City. She immediately proceeded thereat and presented documents relative to ownership and license of the caliber 38 seized from Appellant. Thereafter, she went home at about 11 o'clock in the evening. On November 2, 1995, Petronilla visited Appellant at Precinct 8. During the visit, Alino arrived at Precinct 8 and pointed at Appellant. Subsequently, Appellant and Petronilla were informed by the police that they were suspect in killing of Ramon. Thereafter, they were charged with murder. Next. Ruling of Regional Trial Court. The RTC rendered a decision on 29 November 2002, convicting Appellant and Petronilla of murder. It held that Appellant and Petronilla conspired in killing Ramon. It also ruled that Ramon's killing was attended by the aggravating circumstance of evident premeditation and nocturnity. In conclusion, it imposed the death penalty on Appellant, while Petronilla was merely sentenced to reclusion perpetua, owing to her being a mother on her lesser degree of participation in the killing of Ramon. The follow of the decision reads: accordingly, based on the evidence presented by the prosecution and the defense in finding both accused guilty beyond reasonable doubt of the crime murder, attended by the aggravating circumstance of evident premeditation and criminality without being offset by any mitigating circumstance, the accused Angelo Zeta is hereby sentenced to death by lethal injection. The wife and co-accused Petronilla Zeta, although a conspirator in the commission of the offense charge, is hereby sentenced to reclusion perpetua owing to her being a mother and lesser degree of participation in the act of murder. This issue the accused Angelo Zeta and Petroniel Zeta are also sentenced to indemnify and solidum the heirs of the victim in the amount 50,000 for the death of Ramon Garcia and 146,000 for the hospital and burial expenses of 1,642,440 pesos for the lost income of the deceased second after 10 years of active life plus cost. The 45 caliber Lama pistol with serial number C27854 is confiscated in favor of the government to be kept by Philippine National Police as mandated by law. Noong December 9, natin she would appear for the court's instant phonetic review of the penalty imposed. Noong December 24, 2002, yung Petronilla nag-file ng notice of appeal sa RTC stating that she would be appeal her conviction of this court. Noong April 28, 2004, nag-file ng motion to withdraw appeal. Nag-withdraw yung pagkatapos niya malaman yung weakness na yung withdraw niya yung na-withdraw niya yung pagkatapos niya malaman the base on September 28, 2004, we issue a resolution granting Petronill's motion to withdraw appeal. Next. Yun, issues. First issue. Appellant claims that although Edwin and Ray positively identified Petronilla as the one who asked them about Ramon and his address shortly before the incident occurred, the two nevertheless failed to identify Appellant as Petronilla's companion during the said questioning. He also argues that Aline's testimony identifying him as the one who shot Ramon during the incident is not morally certain because Aline narrated that she saw only the side portion of his face and the color of the shirt. Dito sa pag-examination kay Eileen para maano yung issue na dun sa kaso tinanong hindi naging reason yung hindi naging valid yung only yung kahit kalahati lang na mukha nakita dun sa nakita ni Ali dun sa kasi sabi dito na yung ganong pangyayari, sapat na yung makita yung ganong para sapat na yung ganong pangyayari para lang ma, malaman ni Eileen na siya talaga yung bumarel. Tsaka ang layo ni Eileen is tsaka dun sa bumarel is nasa mga 1 meter lang. Tapos tawag doon, si hindi nakita nung Edwin and Ray yung mga unang tinanungan ng akusado yung bumarel kasi hindi nila nakita kung sino yung nagdadrive ng kotse kasi yung babae, yung isa lang yung nagtanong. Pero si Alin, positively na tinuro sila, dalawang beses silang tinuro ni Alin na sigurado na ito talagang si Angelo Zeta ang bumaril. Second and third issues, appellant methods that his conviction is unwarranted based on the following reason. The prosecution failed to establish any possible motive for the appellant to kill Ramon. There is an inconsistency in the testimony of the prosecution witness regarding the type and color of the car boarded by appellant before and after the incident. Edwin testified that appellant Petronila left scene board gold-colored Mitsubishi Lancer, while SPO Tumagundakan narrated that he apprehended appellant while the latter was about to board blue Toyota Namacho. Jose could have been the one who fatally shot Ramon, and appellant could have been mistakenly identified as Jose because you have the same physical appearance and physical features dahil nga kapatid sila. If appellant was indeed the one who shot Ramon, he could have been immediately confessed such crime to the police just like what he did after killing Jose, and there is no proof that appellant is the husband of certain Melly. Ramon is the declaration to Alin that was the husband of Melly, his former neighbor, Elas Piñas, who shot him for their Petronia's nickname called either Benelli or Nelia, and that Melly as referred by Ramon. Dito sa pinakaunang, number 1, the prosecution failed to establish any possible motive for the appellant to kill Ramon. Lack of motive does not preclude conviction when the crime and the participation of the accused in the crime are definitely shown. Particularly when we consider that is a matter of judicial knowledge that person have killed or committed serious offense for no reason at all. Motive gains importance only when the identity of the culprit is doubtful. 2, there is an inconsistency in the testimony of the prosecution witness regarding the type. Dito sa number 2, there is an inconsistency of the, kasi sinasabi na, balik mo muna pa. There is an inconsistency in the testimony of the prosecution witness regarding the type and color of the car boarded by the appellant and Petronila before and after incident. Kasi si Edwin tsaka si Ray, testify sila na yung kotse na nakita nila nung pinagtanungan sila nung mga akusado is gold-colored Mitsubishi Lancer. Tapos yung SPO Tumagundakan, nahuli niya yung dalawa na iba naman yung gamit na sasakyan. Tapos ang paliwanag dito kasi yung called not apprehended. Pumunta muna to si Angelo Zeta tsaka si Petronila Zeta dun sa pagtas nilang barilin si Ramon. Pumunta sila dun sa bahay ni Jose tapos binaril din nila. Ayon sa testimony ni John Ryan Zeta, yung anak ni Jose Zeta. Tapos doon sila nahuli nung SPO2 Magundakan. Jose could have been the one who fatally shot Ramon and Capelan to the missing. Next. The trial court errors of the RTC. The trial court gravely erred in convincing the accused appellant despite the fact that the prosecution witness did not positively identify him. The trial court erred in disregarding the defense of denial and alibi interposed by the accused appellant. The trial court erred in convicting the accused appellant despite the fact that his guilt was under a shadow of doubt. Next.
Ano to?
Decision ko na lang pa. We now go to the propriety of the penalty imposed. Penalty imposed and the damage awarded by the RTC, which the Court of Appeals affirmed. The RTC held that the killing of Ramon qualifies as murder because of the presence of the aggravating circumstances of evident premeditation and nightmare of nocturnity. It's a rule of evidence that aggravating circumstances must be proven as clearly as the crime itself. Evident premeditation qualifies the killing of a person to murder if the following elements are present. The time when the offender determined to commit the crime and act manifestly indicating that culprit clung to his result. A sufficient interval of time between the termination of conception and the execution of the crime to allow him to reflect upon the consequences of his act and allow his conscience to overcome the decision of his will if he desired to hearken to his warning. The first two elements of the evident premeditation are present in the case bar. Yung first element, the time when the offender determined to commit the crime, ito yung pag tanong kung saan nakatira si Ramon, tsaka yung oras pagpunta nila ng 2 o'clock, tsaka second, an act manifestly indicating that the culprit. Ito yung pag-antay nila para lang, yung parang pinaka-determinado talaga sila na may gagawing masama. Tapos, dito sa pangatlong elements ng evident premeditation, hindi naging kasi hindi sapat yung oras, yung lapse ng para magkaroon siya ng maisip nila yung gagawin nila na parang makonsensya sila na gagawin nila kasi 15 or 30 minutes lang para lang hindi sapat yung ganong oras para lang maisip nila yung na yung gagawin nila is buong buo na ba talaga o kasi dapat mga halos ilang oras din siya para lang magawa. Nonetheless, we find that treachery attend the killing of Ramon. So the repression of merong we find that treachery attend the killing of Ramon. There is a treachery when the offender commits any of the crimes against a person, employing means of methods or forms in the execution thereof which tend directly and specially to ensure its execution without risk to himself arising from any defensive retaliatory act which the victim might make. Two essential elements are required in order that treachery can be appreciated. The employed of means, method, or manner of execution that would ensure the offender's safety from any retaliatory act on the part of the offended party who has thus no opportunity for self-defense or retaliation. Second, a deliberate or conscious choice of means, method, or manner of execution. Further, this aggravating circumstance must be alleged in information and duly pleaded. Dun sa number one na elements ng treachery, wala di nagkaroon ng oras si yung biktima para depensahan yung sarili niya kasi that time ginising siya ni Alin dun sa kwarto niya like medyo hindi pa siya kumulot sa sarili, gising lang niya tapos bumaba siya tapos bigla siyang binaril ng tuloy tapos itong suspect meron siyang isa siyang member ng gun club and proficient in using caliber llama pistol. Ginawa niya, nag-take advantage siya ng kakayahan niya para lang mag-commit yung isang crime. As regards the appreciation by the RTC of the aggravating circumstance of nocturnity, it should be underscored that nocturnity or nightmare is by itself not an aggravating circumstance. It becomes only when it was especially sought by the offender or it was taken advantage by him. It facilitated the commission of crime by ensuring the offender's immunity from capture. There is no evidence presented that the nighttime was especially and purposely sought appellant to facilitate to the commission of the crime or that it was obeyed for the purpose of impunity. Moreover, the crime scene was well lighted of fluorescent bulb. Yung isa pang aggravating circumstance na pinatong ng RTC sa kinaso ng RTC yung nocturnity, hindi siya naging kasi that kahit na 2 o'clock siya nangyari hanggang 2:30 yung area is well lighted tsaka may fluorescent din kaya hindi na siya apply. We have held that nocturnity is not an aggravating where the place is the commission of the crime is well illuminated. Even if we were to assume that nocturnity was present in that case at bar, this cannot still be appreciated in view of the presence of treachery that attended the killing of Ramon. Nighttime cannot be considered an aggravating circumstance separate from treachery since nighttime is observed in treachery. Next.
The death penalty imposed by the RTC on appellant should be modified. Article 248, the revised penal code, states that the murder is punishable by reclusion perpetua to death. Article 63 of the same code provides that if the penalty is composed of two invisible penalty as in the instant case and there are no aggravating or mitigating circumstances, the lesser penalty shall be applied. Since there is no mitigating or aggravating circumstances in the instant case, and treachery cannot be considered as aggravating circumstances as it was already considered as qualifying circumstances. The lesser penalty of reclusion perpetua should be imposed. The award of damages and its corresponding amount rendered by the RTC should also modified in the line with current jurisprudence. Wherefore, after the after due deliberation, the decision of the Court of Appeals dated 30, 30 of June 2006 in CAR GR and CR number 02054 is hereby affirmed with the following modification. The penalty of, of death imposed on appellant is lowered to reclusion perpetua. Appellant is ordered to pay the heirs of Ramon Garcia the amount of 50,000 as moral damage and 25,000 as exemplary damage. The award of actual damage is reduced to 115,473, and the indemnity for Ramon's loss of earning capacity increased to 2,354,163 in 1919. The award of civil indemnity in the amount of 50,000 is maintained. Appellant's caliber 45 Lama pistol with serial number C27854 is hereby confiscated the favor of the government.
Hindi po natatapos yung report namin. Thank you po, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.